Hi, my name is Chris Scruggs with the Prince William County GIS office. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of some materials we put together that you can look over to get a better appreciation for the types of things that our office does for the county and that you can use in your emergency management planning. So GIS itself, which stands for Geographic Information Systems, is just a useful way to store and display and manipulate geographically based information. It's used around the world in a variety of applications today. So in the County GIS office here, we've used GIS to create a fairly comprehensive set of maps and applications, even surveys that we think that your emergency management personnel can use to provide better situational awareness and help identify potential problem areas within the county for various emergency types, and even better determine where emergency management personnel should be deployed during a crisis. So this video will give you a brief overview of some of these documents and applications, and can kind of give you an understanding of what we're capable of and what we can provide to you during the planning for and during the response to a crisis. So to begin with, we'll just run through each of these fairly quickly. This first one here, which I'll just show you real quick, is a PDF of what we call a map book. It's at a 1 to 6,000 scale of the county, which as you'll see once it loads up will give you a view of even down to the structure level of houses. And this basically, this is over 142 slides, but each one of these being on a fairly detailed area, you could print off at your leisure to carry hard copy maps with you of a particular area if you're going in response to any sort of crisis. So this just kind of shows you a fairly basic thing that we can provide very easily, but may be useful to your folks, given that it's just a quick hard copy map you can carry. So going on to the next one, we're looking at what this is called a place vulnerability story map. This is covering an issue, flooding, which of course is something that our county deals with quite frequently given our proximity to the Potomac River. So you can kind of think of this almost as an interactive PowerPoint. Each of these tabs would effectively be a different slide, and this can you can use this in any sort of demonstration for the public to kind of show what the county has been doing in response to a crisis or planning for a crisis. I'll just click through a couple of these real quick. This first one here, it's actually an interactive map in the background, so it's not just a static image, but this just shows the FEMA designated national flood hazard areas within the county. Of course, we see the Potomac River down in the southeast portion of the county, but a lot of these other purple areas, which of course shown by the legend here is 1% chance of annual flood. So these are areas that we can focus on, and each one of these we can click through. This next one is social vulnerability, so this just shows the areas within the county that the CDC has identified as particularly vulnerable. So if we ever have areas that have flooding and are particularly socially vulnerable, those might be one of the things or areas that we want to pay particular attention to. And in that place vulnerability analysis tab, we can kind of see where the social vulnerability and the flooding areas intersect with one another, and in particular down here, so we have flooding and we have a high social vulnerability score of 0.7 from 0 to 1, 1 being the highest vulnerable areas. And we just have a couple other different tabs here. We can click through special needs infrastructure, essentially showing where things like daycares or mobile home parks or areas that particularly might have a particular special need during a crisis. And that mobile home park that we just looked at is annotated here on the left-hand side, that Holly Acres, which is down here, which also was identified as a critical area with special needs and flooding, and within the social vulnerability score where it ranked fairly high. So there's some other tabs, but we'll just move on. The next item is kind of a more unique one. So not only do we have the ability to display maps and interactive presentations, but we also have the ability to conduct surveys. So this effectively is taken from one of FEMA's damage assessment operation guides, and it allows folks in the field through just an Android or an iPhone, smartphone, they can go out and identify areas that they find in terms of damage assessment. So they would enter the location information, the street, designate whether there's immediate needs at that area, the owner of the house, whether it's owner or rented, and they can assess the level of damage they observed. the type of structure, single-family apartment, whether it's habitable, what part of the home was impacted, add additional information. They can identify it with this interactive map, essentially, which will automatically populate the latitude, longitude, and they can even upload photos of those issues or the damage themselves. And this will basically populate a database that the county office can then access. So not only does this allow us to quickly gather information, it helps us analyze and process that information fairly quickly as well. So building off of that survey, we have the damage assessment dashboard to just kind of show you how that information could be gathered and used. So if we had, in this case, we did a sample of 5 different properties, which you can see here listed on the left. And if we click on each one of these properties, we have the information that was entered into that survey form, showing the damage level, being inaccessible, type of incident, flood, and then also a nice little picture here, insert, to show exactly what the problem looks like. They're identified here by the quick dots, so you can individually click them if you'd like. But again, you can also just use the slider over here to select them individually. And in showing aggregate data here, it's pretty simple as well. For instance, we have the level of damage depicted in a pie chart, so we can see there were 2 out of these 5, 2 different properties listed as major damage, 1 inaccessible, 1 affected, and 1 minor. So it gives you an idea of, once that survey information is collected, how it could be usefully displayed in an application like this. And going on, we have the Situational Awareness Viewer, which is another application that we've created. So effectively, this can be used to show tracking up-to-the-minute warnings from the National Weather Service on storms or flooding. Has access to live feeds of stream gauges and things like that. So if we go down and click on one of these streams, for instance, can actually show you a nice little readout of the stream directly from the National Weather Service and the USGS. All sorts of tracking, historical information here. We have a nice little weather radar that's showing up. So just giving you an example of how these sorts of maps can actually ingest real-time data as well. And we could turn on all of these other fields that we have here, such as fire stations, of the locations of schools and things of that nature. So just another useful tool in helping to track even real-time information with one of these applications. Starting to move quickly through these. The operations response viewer allows users to plot various incidents or even draw evacuation outlines and plot even driving directions. So in this example here, down in the southeast corner, we've just demonstrated where we can draw, for instance, an evacuation zone, different color coding showing that this is a voluntary evacuation area, the red being a mandatory evacuation area. And for instance, like I mentioned, we could put driving directions in here, and we can also draw outlines ourselves if that's something that we're interested in doing. And moving on, we have another survey form, and this one is similar to the last, except this would actually be used by the public itself. So this would be essentially trying to leverage crowdsourcing and letting the public identify where problem areas are. So they could load this onto their phones and quickly denote the type of issue that they've seen, down power lines, damaged structure, or debris, provide a brief description of the incident or upload photos, provide their contact information, and simply submit. So that gives one quick way to show how we can leverage public information in these GIS applications. And moving on, we will look at the public information map down here, which is another application we've created. So this may look a little familiar since it has some of the data from the previous map ingested into it in terms of the evacuation areas, but this would also allow a user to input things like road closures or blockages on here. So as you can see here, those could be inputted on the previous applications and displayed here. Currently, we just have the emergency shelters located within the county, so that's all denoted on here. But to give you an example of the types of information that we could display in one of these applications. And finally, we created what is called a map journal. So this, again, is similar to the story map that we looked at earlier, but just a different format. So we used this one to give an example of a crisis in Hawaii, but of course this could be applied to Prince William County as well. But as you can see, it's fairly intuitive in that you just slide through these as you scroll, kind of giving you an overview of some of the areas of concern during this particular crisis. So this brings up an interactive map here. Clicking on the text itself will show you, for instance, the location of the volcano where the lava flow originated. It can automatically jump you to various neighborhoods that you're trying to look at. The map itself is fairly interactive, having census designated tracks here that you can click on showing the flows of the lava itself, and the user can zoom in. But as you go direct through this, you could insert pictures. You can jump back to the map or different maps. You can insert YouTube videos. Can continue to jump around or insert JPEGs even on the left-hand column here to provide further context. So this is just a nice, useful tool that the county could use in any sort of presentation as well. And there are even more different formats than this if you're interested. So that just gives a very, very quick rundown through the 9 different items that we have put on this portal for your use. Hopefully it gives you a better understanding of the various GIS resources that our office has to offer the county. And it is really just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the services that we can provide. So please don't hesitate to contact us if you have any further information or requests. So thank you again for your time.